So I'm going to start off kind of from the beginning. I think I got this right. Midland born.
Midland born.
And your wife's from Lubbock. So just tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
Well, the story on Midland is my dad was going out to Texas Tech, and he had a job. He was going to work part-time, go to school part-time, and they waylaid him in Midland, the company did, before he started in Tech. And so I was born in Midland Memorial, a few years before Elise, though. And my dad went on to Tech to study engineering, as a matter of fact, but my grandfather came and asked him to come and help with the family business in Sherman, Texas, which is where I ended up growing up in North Texas. Went to a very small high school, but that was one of the really neat things. My parents there were very active in the community, strong Christians. So we were at the church or a community event all the time growing up because my dad said we are called to give back. That's what God has for us to do. And it was also very evident in my small school. I had 48 in my graduating class, 200 in the whole high school, that all of us were needed to make a difference. We also needed to get along, and because we needed each other to be able to move forward. And that's something that's been pointed out to me time and time again, that they believe that is why that I've been so involved, because of that original upbringing there too. But it is amazing where God can take you and what can happen if you allow Him to do that. We're not perfect, but we're going along this path, and that path has really made me more and more yearn for unity among our church, our friends, our communities, and so forth. So that's the path that I'm on now.
That's good. Okay, tell us the story of how Karen stalked you and chased you down and made you marry her. Is that fair?
Not even close. Not even close. I shared in chapel this morning that my first semester at college, and I did go to Texas Tech, I was having a great time, and I was studying engineering, and I was there in college, and Karen was not there. But God very much convicted me after I saw my grades after that first semester that I needed to make an adjustment. And so I moved to a different dorm, and I got a better roommate, and he's right here, there, Dennis Robbins, who's very studious. And then the next year, I was leading a Bible study at the Baptist Student Ministry and met Karen there and met her at church. And I firmly believe that the decisions I made my freshman year put me in a position to where I could meet someone like Karen, a very strong Christian woman, strong family, and definitely is the one that God had for me. And we always wish that, don't we, that we are where God wants us to be and that we'll meet the right people. And that's what happened.
Just so we don't forget this, you've got kids and grandkids. Real quick, you want to say a few words about your children and then...
Absolutely. We taught 10th grade in our Sunday school for some 25 years. And so we've seen a lot of good parents that did not have kids that were reflective of them or God at all. So I don't want to take any credit for how our kids turned out, because we say that when you have good kids that love you, they are a blessing from God. And that is what has happened for us, is that we have 2 daughters and a son. And my daughter, the oldest one, knew she wanted to be a school teacher very early. And it's amazing how God has used her to do that. And we also knew she was going to be a minister's wife. It's hard to explain, but she did. She married a minister, and they are in a suburb of Dallas, Wiley, and the church is really growing, and our son-in-law has gone from a youth minister now to the number one assistant to the pastor there in the church. And then my middle daughter is my overachiever, and she was president of student body in high school, at college, and then even in law school. And she specialized in litigation and won the moot court competition, but God had a different plan for her. She fell in love with a guy, and she wanted to start a family. And interestingly enough, she was at Tech when she met him, and he was from Mansfield, Texas, right next to us, and we knew his parents. And so anyway, she now is my chief of staff at my engineering firm, and it's a long story how that happened. Really blessed to do that. And then my son is a surveyor, and he heads my survey department inside my engineering department. So to cut to that, they have married great Christian people. We love our vacations, but we also love our grandkids. And each one of them had 3 kids, and they are from 2 to 10 years old. And we really are enjoying them. And my middle daughter told her brother and sister, we're going to have our kids now so that they have cousins to play with. And it worked. So
that's good. I want to get into your book. First of all, why write it? I mean, what was impressed upon you that I've got to speak into this right now?
Throughout my career, and especially Dr. Jackson will tell you, he's got his engineering students working in teams now, I'm sure. Well, when you're working in teams, amazing things can happen if you value each other and you respect each other and you're kind. And that is a real problem now throughout our country because we have a lot of dissension, division, silos and fragmentations of people that won't speak to each other. And so consequently, everyone in business now is trying to figure that out because what happens when you're arguing and having dissension? There's no productivity. The morale goes down. People get depressed. They don't want to be around people. And so we are all working towards unity. And yet, all through the Bible, God talks about that. You know, in Hebrews, I shared this in Hebrews 10, it talks about how we are to spur one another on and to meet together and to strive for unity. And for me, almost every success I have had, it involved bringing people together to pray and then to develop a plan and move out together to make things happen. And then sometimes you don't have successes, but when you have other people there, you lift each other up and you encourage people, and then you move on to something else. But I think it's one of the most important things for us to change this cycle right now in America. And so that is why the book, and then interestingly enough, New York University studied Arlington, Texas while I was in office. And when I was leaving office, they said, you really ought to write a book about how you brought people together to get things done. And then later they came forward with Forbes, and Forbes told me that here in America that people want unity. It is one of the top things that people want. However, they're not doing anything about it to create unity. And so they came and encouraged me to write the book. We embarked on that in a big way in September, and the book dropped in September 9th, and it has proven that people do want unity. We are an Amazon bestseller, praise God. And then here's probably the bigger thing is that when Forbes came, I told them, I said, I really need to be able to share my faith. And they said, well, you can do a chapter on faith. I said, no, that's not what it is. It's throughout the book. Every endeavor had God in it, and even the ones where we failed, it was us that didn't do it. So a lot of nights on the kitchen table, and at least my wife could see where I was at, even though she said, I didn't get to talk to you much. But anyway, we're very hopeful that we are going to be able to combine with much of our faith-based community to really start a movement towards unity. We saw that happen in the 60s when they were burning flags, drugs were rampant, and the deterioration of the family was happening. And then what came forward in the 70s, we saw the Jesus Revolution. We saw the Billy Graham Crusades, and people came together. And so hopefully we can get back to that. And then if we can't, that means Jesus is coming back pretty quick, so we're going to be all right there too.
So the idea of disagreeing, you exposed me to the students that I like Coke Zero and not Dr. Pepper as much. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to go back to a campus after that. But we disagree. We won't agree on everything, and I want to talk about specific disagreements in this book. But just before we get into it, can you help us understand? We're at a point where we're not even talking anymore. How do we bring people back to the table to listen and talk again? What's the recipe for that, and what is the role of the church in that to make that happen?
Isn't it important that we value each other? You know, you can have a disagreement with somebody that you know they respect you, and you listen to them. And so I think it begins with valuing people. It begins with respect. And then how many times are we listening to respond to somebody instead of listening to understand what they're doing? And it makes all the difference when you're having those conversations and they realize that you are listening to them and trying to understand their viewpoint. And that's not easy. And we've got to get out of our heads that in the midst of this cancel culture where if you disagree on one thing, we're done with you. And then I used the illustration this morning of Eric and I can't imagine, because we disagreed on one thing, Coke versus Dr. Pepper, look where we're at. Well, this man has come into my life at key times and his family, and then here they are again in a key time helping me to spread a message versus if that friendship had ended some 20 years ago because we disagreed on Coke and Dr. Pepper. But that is sometimes how silly it is. And then my two best friends, they're from high school that have been lifelong friends, and one of them is here. He lives in Lubbock, but he and the other guy, we love to debate. We weren't being mean to each other, and sometimes they get pretty heated, but all the time our friendship was actually deepened because of those discussions. And then Dennis reminded me that he moderated there a lot of that. But we said we would have never been friends. We were so different, but yet we grow to respect each other and to respect each other's opinion. And yes, we did listen to understand. And of course, the scripture in Ephesians there lays it out very well, Ephesians 4, where it talks about us not only encouraging one another, but to be gentle and to actually forgive and work together. And it's so important that we do that. And then it's amazing what can happen in your family, in your business, and then when you're volunteering.
Okay, well then I'm going to challenge you on some of the things that you wrote in your book. And I'm going to do it, I'm just going to gloss over. The Jones family didn't want AT&T Stadium where it's at, and they told you that, correct?
They did.
How did you handle direct opposition to that? How do you deal with that?
Well, I'll quickly go through this. I won't give you the full engineering part of it, Matt. I'll just cut to the chase. Our firm worked really hard to become the civil engineer for AT&T Stadium. We had to compete against a lot of other firms around the country, and we were so elated after we got the job. And we had already previously worked on where the stadium was going to be even before all of this started. And it was located there so that we could actually have the opportunity to have a lot of interchanges on the various freeways to bring people in. It was off of the freeway. So that's pretty simple. Y'all can understand that. There were other factors too, but we had only been on the job 2 months. And Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones' son, came to me and said, we need you guys to do a sightline study. We want to move the stadium right up on Interstate 30 because we're afraid no one's going to see it. Well, that's pretty funny now, isn't it? You can see it from miles away. But I can tell you that I'm sure that I looked horrified when he said that. And I didn't know the Joneses very well at that time either. And what I was sitting here thinking, it wasn't the sight lines that were issue. If we move that on that freeway, we'll never be able to handle the traffic. We had studied the traffics at stadiums all over the country. And so I go back, and of course, that night with Karen, I'm sitting here going, I'm going to tell them the thing that's going to get me fired because they want to move this stadium. And of course, here's where it got worse. The next day, I go to our team meeting, and all the architects and contractors and other engineers were there. And they knew that said, you better tell them what they want to hear. You're going to get fired. You're going to be the shortest lived civil engineer on any project, and the whole country's going to know it. And it was that kind of, and they were serious, but we went back to our managers and we told them, I said, this may be the end of it, but we cannot not tell the truth and not leave things out, because we then would have that sin of omission. But worse, the stadium is going to crater because we won't be able to handle the traffic. And then ironically, the worst traffic of any stadium in the whole NFL was the old Texas Stadium at Irving. And then it's interesting, the second worst was the Washington Redskins, but the best was the Baltimore Ravens. But we made the decision, we're going to tell the truth. It was what we should do, but believe me, I was still had a lot of fear. And we prepared our presentation. We actually got a testimonial from the Baltimore Ravens about the importance of not putting it on the freeway. We made the presentation, and Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones asked some questions, but we couldn't tell how it was going. And so we leave there not knowing. And the next morning, Stephen Jones called and said, we hear you. We're going to leave it where it's at and not move it up on the freeway. And I thought, my goodness. And what we saw there, too, was just a time when we could have made a huge mistake out of fear and out of doing the wrong thing. But it was one of those moments where the right decision was integrity. And, of course, that's another part of everything. You cannot be a leader without character values. That is the foundation of everything. And then we know character values are Jesus' values.
So you have that run in, but it only escalates when you become mayor and the Rangers are about to leave. I mean, you're going to be known as the mayor who lost the ball club for the rest of your life. You're going to be tattooed with that. Tell us about that situation.
Well, there's only 30 cities who have a Major League ball team in there. And in Arlington, and most of you have been there many times probably, but it is, the Texas Rangers are a part of the fabric of our community. I mean, so many got their first jobs working in the parking lot or in the concession stands at the Rangers. They have celebrated anniversaries, birthdays, got engaged, even had weddings there on the ball field. And then the economic devastation would be terrible if we lost the Rangers. So basically, we had to have a plan, didn't we, Karen? And I shared this morning that we brought people together to pray, and we developed a plan to keep the Texas Rangers. But the thing that Eric is getting at, Dallas and other cities wanted that ballpark. And so we had WFAA coming over every day reporting on something bad about Arlington, Texas. I mean, if there was trash down there, if there's somebody on the deal. But then I'll never forget when it first started, I walked out, and y'all may remember the reporter's name was Brett Shipp, investigative reporter for WFAA. And I just walked out of the council chambers, and he stuck a microphone in my face, and he said, "Is it true that you're the owner of Graham Engineering?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Is it true that you're just doing this ballpark because you want to be able to get work for your engineering firm, and that's why you're trying to get this in Arlington?" I said, "No." I said, "As a matter of fact, if it went to any other city, I probably would get the job because I did their last Ranger ballpark, but I can't do it here in Arlington because it's against the law. I can't do the work here." But that just made him mad, and it just got worse. And we had a group of really about 30 or 40 citizens that did not agree at all with that ballpark, combined with WFAA that was on TV. It was one of the scariest times of our lives. We had to have security with us, and then yet we knew that overwhelmingly that our citizens wanted to keep it. We had already gone through that before I was elected, to be sure. So God saw us through it. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest days for us is when we were out of town, and one of the guys that was against this project put a letter on the windshield of every person's car at our church. And it told things that Karen and I didn't know about ourselves. It was terrible. And anyway, we heard about it. We came back to town, and anyway, our church members and our friends throughout the community stuck with us. And it was an amazing thing there through it. And I've got to say this too, that is why we have such a hard time getting people to want to run for office. And so I think it's so important we as Christians there find the right people and help support them that have something to give, and especially if they have a business background at the local level. And I can tell you that being mayor was one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, because we got to help people every day. And at the local level, you can still do that. And so we made it through it. I'll say, you know, that we did keep the Rangers, and we have a new ballpark, but the thing that I think I'm most proud of is that we kept our old ballpark. It is the only repurposed major league ballpark in the country. It is making money. We have soccer. We have football, Texas high school football, and the UFL playing there. And we have a rugby team. The offices have expanded in co-working. And then here's where I'm really excited. We have restaurants and shops that are starting to go into the ballpark right across from the hotel. And one of the neatest stores in Abilene is Lone Star Dry Goods. And we found them. And now Ted Evans has opened up a Lone Star Dry Goods right in the old ballpark. And isn't it a cool store? Ted, thank you for coming today.
Yeah, Ted,
man.
stand up real quick so everybody can see you. Everything is free at Lone Star today because of Ted, so he didn't object. Okay, so let's fast forward just a little bit, because there's a real issue that you dealt with that's very tragic. A young man, African-American male, was shot by a police officer in Arlington in a very difficult time. Tell us that story.
Well, I want you to think back to 2015. Ferguson had several murders in their city. Baltimore the same way. In fact, Baltimore had set a record for the number of killings in their city. Charleston had a church there that had been attacked. So the country was on fire. And it's specifically about white policemen shooting black males. And everything was going so good for us. We had landed Texas Live there to a large entertainment complex coming. We knew that we had an opportunity here to bring Lowe's hotels to our city. Our downtown was really moving. In fact, I've got to compliment your downtown. Everybody comes to Abilene to see your downtown, and that was a catalyst for us. And we'd had that going on, so great things were happening. And then literally, I guess 4 months in, Karen and I, 4 months in after becoming mayor, we went to my son's graduation at Texas Tech, and we were in Lubbock, and I started getting these messages from Good Morning America to Today's Show and so forth, saying you need to call us. And then I got a call from our chief of police, and he shared with me that the night before, a young African-American male had broken into a car dealership. He was on drugs, and a rookie policeman pulled up and, against all the rules, ran into the dealership and shot and killed him. And here we were there again in the middle of something, a storm that's so tragic there with it. And before I go any further, I've got to share with you, storms hit all the time, don't they? You never know when something's going to come out of nowhere with your family or with your business or something you're working on. And we have a Navy SEAL and astronaut that has become a really good friend of ours. He heads up the National Medal of Honor Museum. And this is a guy that is just incredibly strategic, and he's excelled at everything he's done. And you ask him about what happens when storms come. And here's his advice. He says, whenever you think things have gotten worse than they can ever be, I mean, things are just one thing after another is happening bad, you need to realize that you can make them worse. Now, isn't that kind of humorous when you think about it? But he said, you need to stop. You need to slow down. And, of course, that's the time to pray and to really analyze what's going on. Well, we're in the car headed back from Lubbock, and I talked all the way to Abilene. They're literally on that phone with the chief of police and our city manager about our next steps. But I was a newly elected mayor. You know, I'm sitting here going, I need to be the spokesman for my city. And I need to go on Good Morning America and to Today's Show tomorrow and explain them that our city is different, you know, that we have great unity in our city. Well, these guys, both the chief of police and city manager, said you can't do that. It's a gauntlet. You know, you could expose our city to all kinds of problems because they don't want to hear your story. They will want to trip you up. Well, my pride and ego was just, you know, flexing out. I said, you know, they don't trust me, and yet I know I can do this. Well, I called a meeting that night. It was Sunday night, and we met at 6 o'clock. And they had the chief of police, deputy city managers, all of our communications people there, and they explained to me why I couldn't do it. And I sat there and go, my goodness, Jeff, you are letting your ego and pride get into this thing. And I said, well, how about if I write a letter so at least I'm not staying silent? They said, that's a good idea. But what I realized is that I was not the best spokesman. I was not the best person. I was a business guy. And in business, you can retract things. When you're dealing with this, you can't. But I want to cut to the chase to where sometimes we need to realize that we need other people. In fact, we always do. And we're not always the best person to be doing things, and we need each other, and that's a real key also for success. But amazing things happened. We did move forward and fire the policeman because he didn't do anything right that night. But here's where God took over. The minister of the black male that was shot, he met with the white minister of the white policeman, and they met together and they prayed and they said, let's have a town hall prayer meeting. And I go, that's interesting. I've never had a town hall prayer meeting. And he said, let's have it at the church of the young man's that was shot. And the two ministers would speak and try to bring people together, but we'll allow them, the citizens, to come and ask their questions. And in the church setting, hopefully that will be better. Well, we arrived. We actually thought, well, it might work, you know. And there was a whole lot of prayer, and it went. And this was 3 days after the policeman had been fired. Well, we go into the church and hear all the cameras lined up. Yeah, ABC, CBS, all of the national media was there at the back of the church, and the church was full, and they actually had overflow into closed circuit TV. And myself and the chief of police and the two ministers spoke, and then we asked for questions. And the people were emotional, but they were under control. And we were there about 2 hours answering questions. And then the two ministers got up and summed it up that God wants us to live in unity. And this was not the right thing that happened here, but we've got to move on and seek God's guidance as we come together. Everyone filed out quietly. And NBC, I think, got it the best because they said in Ferguson, they're rioting. In Baltimore, people are being shot. In Charleston, rocks are being thrown through the windows of a church. In Arlington, they had a prayer meeting and they went home. Our city was saved from an incredible thing, and I don't think it was any accident that happened, because if things had gone wrong that night, we would have been plunged into a serious issue, and literally decades of work that had been done in our community for us to live together would have been dashed. And it's interesting that you picked that one out, because I have been on a whole lot of podcasts. I've been on a whole lot of this, and no one has asked me about that until now. But it is so important that we reach out to the people that are in our community. And I'm sure even Abilene is getting people moving in from all over the country. And yet that we don't need silos to happen. And that's not who we are in West Texas, is it? Right? We reach out and we're friendly, and that is a real secret to success that the world doesn't know, but we know as Christians, don't we? That's what God has us to do.
Two more questions. One, you and I had a conversation about politics because I've been very interested in where God's leading you and trying to encourage you and say, you know, there's opportunities out there. There's always opposition. And you made a decision not to continue. But you told me it was because of what you were going to have to do in order to win. I think people need to understand that. And could you share a little bit? I don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Well, our congressman died, and I got a call from the Republican Party to run for office, and they said that I had polled the best there, but yet they told me too that I needed to move further right than I was, and I told them, I said, well, I polled the best, so shouldn't I be able to do what I'm doing and be able to do that? And they said, no, that you've got to move further right because the funding will not be there for your campaign if you don't do that. I said, well, I'm not interested. I'm not going to do that. And the doors opened on this book, and we also landed the National Medal of Honor Museum in our community. And the mission at the Medal of Honor Museum, as I mentioned before, is that to inspire America to adopt character values. Between unity and adopting those character values, I thought I have an opportunity there to be able to teach and to speak about the importance of this unity. And I had several people to come to me and said, I think you may be able to make a bigger difference spreading that message than you can sitting in a seat in Congress. And so I don't know, we pray about where God wants us to be, don't we? That's such an important thing for us to do, and I have a piece about what I'm doing now, and Karen and I will continue to search about where God wants us to be, but I am excited about what has been accomplished there in our community, and what is going on right here at Hardin-Simmons, y'all. This place has been transformed since 9 years ago when Eric first came, and God is using him and y'all to come together to create a very special place here. And you didn't forget engineering either. That's pretty awesome.
Last question for me, and then I'll pass it on. You mentioned the book throughout it, teams, putting teams together, getting things done with teams. How important is that to you in all these projects, and what's the number one thing you can do to form a great team?
Y'all, would you think about using only half of your company to do the work that a company needs? No, you wouldn't. And so whenever you are trying to move forward on an endeavor, it's important to find a role for everyone. And there is. And in addition to that, you need different talents, don't you, depending on it. But I think we as leaders need to be the bridge that aligns people with a purpose that they have a passion for. And you have people that need to work, you have people that can help with the planning, you have people that can just be fun. Because when you're working with teams, you need to have a good time. And I can say too that you may be sitting there, I don't like working with teams. Well, God made us to where even the biggest introvert needs to work with people. And in fact, I've seen it time and time again, someone that was lonely, that said, hey, I just want to work on the computer. I don't want to get involved in all the other things there. However, when you get them involved on the right purpose, it is amazing what happens. You know, how God moves in their lives, and they sometimes come up with the best ideas. And in fact, I think that's really a key too, is that we need to teach each other, encourage each other to work together. And you never know where the best ideas are going to come from. And I'll just share with you a really fun thing that happened. is that I had a fifth grader to come to me and tell me that, Mayor, you need to put a GPS sensor on every General Motors vehicle that comes off the line there in Arlington. And that sensor would move you away from the potholes. And then that sensor, and that's keep you out of those potholes, keep those new cars from hitting those potholes. And then that sensor also needs to share where the pothole is, and it needs to send the location directly to the mayor's office to get those potholes fixed. Well, after I got through laughing, I thought, that's a great idea, because what is our GPS sensor? It's our phones. And so I thought, well, we could actually develop an app to where you could, when you see a pothole, you can push the button and it'll send directly to not the mayor's office, but the pothole repair crew to get that fixed. And so actually our staff developed that app, and we have that now, and we have 2 pothole crews that go out every day to repair potholes. And so I think that don't ever think that you can't use people, and probably one of the phrases that many of y'all have used, it's said by Margaret Mead, it's amazing what a few committed citizens can do when they work together. Well, I like to change that. If a few can make a difference, how about hundreds or thousands? Let's bring them all together. And that's what we need in involving all of our family members in what we're doing, involving our friends, and then in business especially, being able to involve everyone and aligning that gift together there with it. And then our nonprofits have been getting it right for a long time, haven't they? They take care of their volunteers. They include them in the decisions there, and they take care of them.
All right, a few questions. Do we have any questions out there that someone would like to ask? Yes, I'm going to hand this to you, and then you are in charge of the microphone from now on. So,
what do you define as unity?
Unity is not uniformity. It's not always agreeing. But it is working together for a common purpose there. And so consequently, you're valuing people. How many times have I said that today? You're valuing people. You're respecting people. You also are, the unity is very important, that all of us realize the need for others and the need to be able to be involved in seeking help there with it. So it's a group of people working together for a common purpose, but all that while then you are showing love and compassion and gentleness for each other. And it's all right to argue, but do it in respect and do it in love.
any other questions?
Oh, Ted's got one for me, Ted. All right, man.
Do you foresee Arlington as being a home to a certain hockey team from Dallas?
Arlington is a neat place, and I've mentioned the Medal of Honor Museum several times. Y'all need to visit if you haven't. It's open now. It just opened up. And you go, how in the world did Arlington land a national museum? Why is it not in Washington, D.C.? And I'm getting to you, Ted, but this is part of the story. There was a 20-city competition to locate that museum in a major city in the United States other than Washington, D.C., because all the national museums are in D.C., aren't they? Well, that one was going to take 20 years to build in D.C. It was also going to cost 50% more, so they said, hey, a lot of our living Medal of Honor recipients will be gone. They'll pass away before they get it built. So they looked for a place to build it. And so that was a 6-month competition, and we were successful in doing it. And at the press conference, General Brady, a Medal of Honor recipient, the most decorated soldier still alive, he was a dust-off helicopter pilot in Vietnam, flew 2,500 missions there and saved over 5,000 soldiers. He said that it was a close competition, that San Diego had a lot of great things going for it. Denver had Peyton Manning and Peter Kurz going for it. But Arlington had so many things going for it, but the thing that made the difference was the spirit of the people. And so now that is built and we have it there, I would think that even the hockey team would want to be there near that stadium. So who knows what's going to be happening in Arlington, Texas. But guys, you have got to be having that feeling right now too, because you've got a game changer happening with the data center there. But the spirit of Abilene is alive and well, and it's going to be interesting how you can capitalize on what happened there. And then there's nothing better than having a university that's capitalizing on our young people and helping them to be ready to tackle the challenges of going into the working world.
One more question? Okay, Jacob?
Thank you for what you've shared today. Truly incredible. When you do something amazing, incredible, great that everyone loves, there's always something that's found to be critical about. With AT&T Stadium, the West End Zone has been the topic of much conversation. In your leadership, it's been stellar. There's something that people find to pick on. How do you respond to criticism? How do you deal with that personally?
Well, I may surprise you with part of that, but there is always criticism. And when people are criticizing to make things better, I spend a lot of time with them. I want to share, I want to understand why. And of course, we need to be lifelong learners. And it's important to learn from other people and to study. And so you can tell the difference when someone is got some criticism that is founded and they want you to do better, they want the thing to be better. And so consequently, I know it's worth investing the time. But I did learn that there are many times that people are being critical because of something else that happened in their life, and you are never going to be able to convince them of anything different. And I had that happen with a young man that was spending a whole lot of my time there, who we could never convince of anything, or in his criticism, we would take care of it and actually do what he asked us to do, and we never got anywhere. He asked to see me and the chief of police. He had a complaint about the police, and we stayed an hour in there, and the chief of police explained to him what we had done to take care of the very thing he did. He left, not satisfied, and chief of police turned to me and he said, "Mayor, how many people do we have in Arlington?" I said, "Well, 400,000. He said, "There's probably 1,000 that needed your attention now that you didn't get to because you wasted all that time with him." So we need to show him love and respect, but we need to move on. And I think that is such an important lesson there to learn, that lots of times people have something happening in their lives, and I think it's important that we always try to show that respect to them. But and then the other part about the West End Zone, this is pretty fascinating. I'll be quick, Eric, but they did sun studies all in AT&T. They're not as sophisticated now. In fact, in 2005, when those were being done, it's much better. And in fact, you'll see Globe Life Field went to town on and learning on what happened at the stadium. However, though, Jerry Jones said, "Hey, we're going to know about where that sun is, and we're going to be prepared for it." Well, we're not always prepared for it, are we? He thought it would be a home field advantage, and it's not. But also, y'all know the sound is not good in AT&T for concerts, depending on where you're at. He said this place is made for football first, special events center second. And so that's why that sometimes the sound is not as good as it is. But however, it's amazing. It's still the greatest special events center in the country. And L.A. tried to claim that with SoFi Stadium. The Horned Frogs went out there, and they were claiming that they were weatherproof. And y'all know what happened in the national championship when the TCU Horned Frogs went out there. That game was almost rained out. The people that were under the cover got soaked and so forth. There was cheering in Arlington, Texas, because, hey, we're going to be – and we've gotten a lot of events because we're weatherproof there. But a great question.
Well, let's give Jeff a round of applause for spending the time. Stay seated real quick. Okay, we've got a special gift for Jeff, a little West Texas spirit, this little statue from Hardin-Simmons University for you. And he's reading the Unity Blueprint right there. I can see it. He's on chapter 4. And then we've got a gift down here for you as well. But I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you coming, taking the time out of your schedule just to be here. But you have spoken into us, and I know you've spoken into a lot of folks, something we need right now. And I think God's clearly speaking through you. So I appreciate that.